Great. Thank you so much for being here. If you are new to the platform, we are a global platform that connects students and recent graduates from emerging markets, especially the regions of Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, and Southeast Asia. We connect you guys to job opportunities and career resources to guide you in this new professional path you're about to start or enter. So my name is Michelle. I'm the events and community manager, and I'm super happy to be here with you in one of our last sessions of the year. So thank you for being here if you're watching this live or if you're gonna be watching this later as a recording. And today, as you might know, we're gonna be talking about getting your first job in software engineering, how to get a job in this area, in this sector. And we're going to be talking with Muhammad Ajad. He's the principal engineer and tech lead at Roblox. And he has also collaborated as a software engineering at Meta, previously Facebook, and also Microsoft. But we're going to be hearing more about those experiences during this session. So if at any time you guys have any question, any comment about Muhammad's journey, about any tips he's sharing, or about any question you might have about your own journey, you can type those questions at any time in the chat, or you can send them in the Q&A function that it's like on the below bar in your screen. Again, you can share those questions at any time. A tip that I always give is like send them as soon as you think of them, because then you can forget them. So just send those questions and then we will start taking them as we have time. So without any further ado, welcome again, Muhammad. Thank you so much for giving us part of your day. And I guess I would like to start this conversation with, if you can like quickly introduce yourself and share like your background and career journey so far. And then how did you land where you currently are in your career?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So currently I'm a tech lead at Roblox. I've been there for about 2 years now. And before that, I used to work at Facebook or Meta. And I also worked for about 2.5 years in the distributed systems and backend systems and networking systems. And before that, we had a startup that got acquired by Google. So I also worked in Google as part of that startup acquisition and was part of Google Cloud, basically. And before that, I also worked in Microsoft Azure, a lot of cloud stuff as well. And before that, I had my PhD in computer engineering here in the US. And before that, I finished my undergrads actually overseas in Jordan. So that's my 15 or I don't know, 17 years of career basically in the software development and software engineering business.
Wow, yeah, no, that was a pretty summarized introduction about your yeah, more than 15 years of experience. And many like known companies, or like many famous, or many of the big tech companies that you have had experience in. So that's amazing. And I guess like my next question will be, and this might be a little broad, but what does exactly a software engineer do? And I know there's a lot of like different roles that a software engineer can go into, but like if you could like summarize it, or in an umbrella of what is exactly a software engineer?
Yeah, that's a good question. Software engineer, basically, you write software that other people can use. And as you mentioned, there's like many fields for software development. It could be like on the mobile, like in your mobile. This is like mobile development, and then it could be like on the web when you open up the web. Like the first thing you hit, like when you open up the browser, it's the front end. Basically, there's front end developers, like their whole career is like focused on that thing. And then there's a lot of services on the back end to just make sure that everything's running smoothly. Like when you open, for example, on Facebook, like we had more than 2 billion active users daily. So if you think it's a massive scale, so there's a lot of services just making sure that all, like when you open up Facebook, it's just seamless. Like if it's not laggy, it's quick. Because if it's not the case, then people will just will just they shut down the app. So basically a lot of backend stuff going on. So these are the main like kind of three categories you can think of, like in terms of software development. There's other areas also as well. For example, data engineering, there's analysis, there's like some researchers. So these are two others. Like you do some software development, but it's not like the core of your like day-to-day thingy. So these are the front end, the back end, and the mobile is the three main like sections I can think of in the software development.
Amazing. And my follow-up question will be, during this like more than 15 years of experience in different companies, and these different like areas that you can focus in as a software engineer, do you have any like favorite like area? And then if you like, why, how did you decided to focus on what you're focusing now from all these like different options that you had? Maybe you just graduated? Like, how did you select?
Yeah. So for me, like as a personal experience, uh like when I initially, so for example, when you initially start, it's kind of like a full stack. You are doing like everything on the mobile, the front end, on the back end. But the more you progress in your career, you cannot like really keep track on like all of these technologies across all these areas. So it's hard, and it takes a lot of effort because there's so many things coming on like every day basically. So this is where people, once they start moving from junior to senior folks, you start like specializing in a specific area. So for me, when I started, like mobile was not really a big thing. So that's why. So but for you guys, whoever is listening, it's mobile now is a really big area. So if you can do iOS, if you can do Android, that's it's a lot of demand on basically mobile, because everything is moving to being mobile first. On the other hand, if you look at the front end, back end, when I also started, there was the front end wasn't like as advanced. There was a lot of, for me personally, there's a lot of frustration in the technology like CSS and all of that. So it wasn't like satisfying for me, because I love developing like new algorithms, new systems, distributed systems, and all of that. So this is where I started like drifting towards backend basically, and distributed systems. You have massive scale. You have to figure out a lot of engineering problems across the world, across the globe. You have to figure out like how do you handle all these kind of things. So this is where I started drifting to backend. But for the whoever is listening, like you guys feel free to. There's a lot of development in the front end. It's a good area. Backend also it's a massive area as well. It's very interesting, as well as mobile development. Um, there's also like if you're interested about AI and all these things, it's also a lot of demand. So you can also something to consider as well. In terms of like some, you haven't asked about this, but maybe in terms of like what is the market requires basically. Um, there's usually like maybe I would say like 30% of the engineers usually, because I worked in Microsoft and Google and Facebook and Roblox, probably I would say around 20% of the engineers they're probably doing like mobile, or I would say 30% doing mobile development. Another 30% is probably doing front end, and the remaining is back end. So there's usually more back end positions opening up. So that's a rough guesstimate, basically based on my based on the U.S. companies that I've worked at.
Yeah, no, and that's a great insight. And it seems like it's pretty balanced, like the percentages of like the positions that you see open. So I get that's a good that's good news for everyone listening. There's like in overall like over like average opportunities for whatever you want to focus on.
Yeah, but
Um,
it's shifting though a little bit. So I would say the front end, the web or the let's say because I don't confuse people, the web development
yeah,
is shrinking a little bit, and the mobile is expanding.
okay.
So this is a trend, a mega trend, basically. Less people are using their laptops. A lot of people are using their mobile phones. So that's something you guys can keep in the back of your mind whenever you want to like specialize. It's too early. Like if you're a junior, it's too early to think a lot about these things, but it's nice to learn like how we want to go forward, like in 3 years.
Right. Thank you for that, and thank you also for sharing how like your how did you like decided or how was for you like when you graduated, and now going back to like the current date, I would like to know what is your day-to-day look like right now in your current position. What type of activities do you do, like, yeah.
Yeah. First thing is coffee. Yeah. And then after that, we usually, like in most companies I worked out, we have like a quick stand up in the morning time, usually around 9 to 9:30. We do a like quick 15 minutes of stand up. And what is a stand up? Is basically everyone's saying what they worked on and what they're gonna focus on, and if there's any like problems they want to raise so that the other team is aligned with them. The remaining of my day is basically I'm really fortunate now that I get to work on coding. I love coding basically, although like I'm pretty like senior. A lot of like companies sometimes when you get more senior, you don't get have time to code because now you're focusing on the vision and focusing on the strategy. But now in the current project, we started a new project where we need development. So the rest of my time I spend it like on coding. Um, Pretty much towards the end of the day, I usually have like 3 meetings or 4 meetings in the day. Each one is like 30 minutes. So that's like probably 2 hours gone just on meetings or 3 hours usually. And these meetings is usually about like either like raising up some problems or like discussing some design for new things we want to do or some other like strategy, but that's something like the more you get senior, now you have to work on the team's strategy. And then the more you get senior, now you focus on the outside the team strategy, like the org strategy. And the more you get senior, now you focus on like on the company strategy and all of that. So, but for you, like for whoever is like join is basically for you, like the more you code, the more you get like your oil, your brain oiled basically, and now you're like developing seamlessly and all of that. So yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. And I'm now my next question is regarding like skills. Like I'm wondering what type of, and you already talk about like the current demand or like the landscape that they can expect when they graduate if they haven't, of the type of jobs that they will be looking at. So what specific skill sets you think are crucial for being a successful software engineering, and it can be like either hard or even soft skills, which maybe it's not so common to talk about the soft skills as someone working in something technical. So if you can share some of the skills that you think are crucial.
Yeah. Yeah, I would start with the soft skills because like I interview a lot of people, a lot of junior folks, and one of the things they miss is basically the communication part. They're not able to sell their skills. They're not able to sell like how like why would a company hire you? So always focus on how would you sell yourself? How would you sell like your experience if you worked a little bit or even at college, if you're fresh out of college, just focus on that. Like how would you sell yourself? That's the communication part and the soft skills. The The technical, in terms of technical skills, what we look at usually in the Silicon Valley, whenever we try to hire someone fresh, is basically two things. I want to make sure that you have really a good, solid foundation in two things. The first thing is the algorithms. The second thing is the data structure. So that's if you are in the software development area, basically front end, back end, mobile, it doesn't matter. You should have like strong foundation and good skills in algorithms and as well as data structures. And I can share with you how you can practice these now. If you're still in studying or if you're just finished, even though like you finished and you have a job, you still have to keep like brushing up on these two main things that we usually look at, like whenever we evaluate junior folks. Yeah, so these are the main two things I can think of in terms of skills. If you are an AI and all these, this is another like kind of beast. You have to know about the some of the machine learning foundation, supervise, unsupervised, all these things. I'm not gonna cover these now.
Oops, I was on mute. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm actually thank you for sharing those skills. And I'm actually sharing on the chat for everyone a workshop that we have happening on Monday. And this is basically how to pass your first job interview.
Oh,
So
nice.
how to make sure that you actually know how to communicate your experience, even if you're looking just for an internship, if you're still in college, like you still have skills that you're developing during your college experience, in your projects that you're doing in school. So, but sometimes it's difficult because they feel like they don't have experience because they haven't had a full-time job yet. But you guys have skills. So yeah, I just want to invite you all to come to this workshop. To be able to refine that communication skill if you are not yet that secure about yourself. So yeah, that's there for you. And
Yeah,
then I would
yeah,
like to know, yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
It's I would say it's a good workshop. I know I personally know Iyad. We finished from the same school, so
Oh
the
wow.
yeah, yeah. He's a friend of mine. So yeah, you guys
I
attend
I
that.
I didn't know that, but yeah, yeah, it is the best. And these workshops, we have these workshops each Monday. So if you lose one, you can always come the next Monday. Or if you feel like you didn't finalize doing something, you can always come next Monday. But yeah, Hiad is the best. Is our career coaching residence. And the cool thing about these workshops, and this is the last part about the workshops, and then we will go back to the conversation. The cool thing about these workshops is that it's actually like one-on-one. So you can come with your CV, or if you have an interview coming up, or you just want to like learn how to communicate your skills, as Muhammad was saying, you can come with your specific case, and Hiyat's team, we have 3 coaches. So Hiyat's team on the call, they will help you do that specific case for you. So this is a really individualized session, so you can always come and ask your specific questions.
That's
Um,
awesome. I wish we had something like this when we graduated, like long time.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so again, like going back to conversation, you were already again sharing some of the how the market is like moving, what type of positions they can expect to in general. But I would like to know, like, if I'm just graduating from college, what are some of the, and there might be many, but what are some of the most typical, you will say, positions for someone who just graduated? Like, what can I expect to do in my first type of job? And you were sharing for you was like a full stack. So you were doing a little bit of everything. What other type of positions do you think are there for someone who is just graduating?
Yeah, for someone who's just graduated, we usually have the like across the companies I worked at, like whether it's Microsoft, Google, or Meta and Roblox, we usually have like a software engineer. That's it, like generic for a fresh graduate. We don't have like really deep specialty, and then once you get in, you get matched to some team that you find interesting, and then you get to like work on a specific domain, a specific area. Um, So that so apart from that, what we usually also sometimes hire, not all companies do that. Some companies do, like on Microsoft, we sometimes tended to hire like project manager. Uh, I haven't seen that a lot like in the Silicon Valley, but some companies do that. They hire a project manager, and project manager is basically, um, if you're not familiar with it, like you interface with end users, you see what requirements they have, and you take these requirements to the engineering folks. You basically prioritize, basically depending on how much like capacity we have, how much priority we want to like emphasize on certain aspects versus others. That's really like 1,000 feet view of what a project manager is. So software engineer, project managers, uh, little bit of product manager, but usually the project manager, the product manager, usually in most of the companies I worked at or in the Silicon Valley, usually they start as engineers and then they evolve into project or product manager. But some companies, they do actually hire these like as a fresh graduate. So yeah, but I would say it's a lit like in terms of how many percentage wise, it's a small fraction. They go directly into project management. Um, so mostly software engineers, I would say. Some of them data analysts, but also a small fraction of people go directly as a data analyst. Um, so yeah, these are the main things that typically, or if you have some specialty, if you have masters in AI, uh, like you can go into a software engineer in AI. But as I said, like mostly in most companies, we would have a generic software engineer where you can go and then you explore different things, and then you you go in. So yeah, another thing outside the software development, I mentioned product management, project manager. Another thing is basically sales, and I can or pre-sales, and it's actually a lot of people in the MENA region, in the Gulf, for example, they have a lot of sales. So that's another, and it's not that one is better than the other. It's basically some people have skills, that really nice skills that tailors them towards sales. Some people have skills they love to just churn code, develop code, and all that. So it's really about what you like, basically. And as I said, in the MENA region, they take a lot of sales and pre-sales, and a lot of the people in my, for example, when I was in college, like a lot of the smartest people, they also went into sales. So it's not that development is for the smartest and what's left over is for sales. No, actually, I had a lot of smart people who went into sales and pre-sales. So software engineering or development, sales, pre-sales, project management, product management, some data and analytics if you're into that. Some people go into like kind of SRE, we call it, like software reliability engineer. Uh, and that's an area like we have a lot of these folks in the Silicon Valley, and your job is basically is focusing on the reliability of like a big system. For example, in Google Cloud or in Azure, you're not writing code like all the time, but you still do are required to write code to improve the reliability of the services. You may have to log in into routers and figure out what the issue is. You may have to like do some tracing of data and all that. So that's another area if you're like if you're interested in the Silicon Valley, that's another area. It's called an SRE, software reliability engineer. So that's another area you can basically target. But among all of these, I would say the biggest chunk of openings are for software development again. And when I say software development, it's usually in the past we used to have like software engineers and we had QA engineers, like QA, which is for testing and quality assurance. But now in Silicon Valley, like we don't have that anymore. That was like in the in the 2000s, in the 90s, we had like QA and software engineers. but now it's all merged into just one software engineer, because you as a software engineer, you're required to be able to do QA testing and all of that. So yeah, so software engineering, there's product management, there's project management. Um, as mentioned, there's sales and there's data if you're interested in that. So these are the main categories where you can target. And I repeat again, most of these openings that you'll see, a lot of them, a big chunk is for software engineers. So that's yeah, that's how things
Yeah,
are. Topology in Silicon Valley.
yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. That was a great like overview again of like the what can they expect when they're graduating. And I guess another commercial is that many like I think like many of the team here at Localize, we were actually, including myself, hired by Localize, like on the platform. So we were users first. And I'm mentioning this because I mean, I'm not on the software team, but a lot of our, I think two of our team members in the technical part on the software team, they were hired as a users on Localize. So I'm mentioning this in case you guys as users right now, as students or as fresh graduates, you might have questions about, oh, am I like filling out or communicating my skills right when I'm applying to jobs in software through the platform? You can always reach out to any of us at the localized stream through the platform to ask all these questions. As someone who passed this process through the platform itself. Um, so we're here to support you guys. And I do have many more follow-up questions, but I see that we have questions coming up from our attendees. So I'm gonna start taking some of them to make sure we address them all. And you can also see them, Muhammad, on the Q&A section, but I'm gonna read them for you. So let's see. There's one coming from Keisha. And they're asking if you can recall a project or achievement that you're particularly proud in your software engineering career. Um, it can be at any point of your career. And what did this project teach you?
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was a big project that I started from scratch in Facebook, and that project is basically about like in software development, usually whenever you have a massive system, a massive infrastructure like Facebook, Google, or Facebook, or Microsoft, I mean, uh, you have services all over the world, and there's so many services talking with each other. There's routers, there's people. Whenever there's a problem, usually it takes a lot of time to diagnose where the problem is. And usually whenever there's some blast, some fire, it cascades down basically to many services, many other systems. You can think of it as a tree, basically. If you burn out the root, it just cascades, starts cascading into the leaves and branches. So that's how things are, and it usually takes time to analyze what's happening, understand what's happening, and trying to resolve and mitigate the issue. So I built a system basically that tackles that problem. Whenever there's a problem, it's basically it's spreading and all that. The system is like it's a brain that continuously analyzing that kind of tree, and it continuously says, oh, the problem is here. Although you're seeing fires everywhere, that's the root cause of the problem. If you fix that, it's gonna fix everything else. So that cut a lot of basically man hours, and it made resolving problems much faster. So this is something I was proud of. What did it teach me? It's basically sometimes whenever you are like in this career, people may not tell you, oh, I have a problem and can you figure out a solution. It's basically you have to keep watching and seeing where's like what others are suffering in your organization or in your team, and then you propose, you come up with something. So that's something I got like it taught me. The other thing is basically I build the system in a generic way so that you can take it and apply it, like you can just apply anywhere you want. So it's a generic system. We had some other like small solutions that were working for very specific services, a very specific domain, like, oh, this works only for the router and switch. Another system, oh, this works like for with Kafka DB or Cockroach DB. But when you build something generic and then you can show that it works across multiple domains, I tell you that, oh, you can work this and have it working in localized like environment if you guys have some services, or you can take it to Facebook, you can take it to Microsoft, and it would still work. So that adds more value to kind of the skills you have under your belt, is that you can build something generic and you can apply everywhere. So yeah, that's some of the learnings I had.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And now we have the other part, I guess, of the question, also coming from Kisha. So they're also asking if you have had any significant challenges. So we talk about successes and achievement you had. So now, have you had any challenges or barriers during your path to becoming a software engineer? And once you already were a software engineer, like during your switch of company to company, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges. Like the more you become senior, the more challenges you will have to face. This actually shows the more senior, the more you can highlight some of the challenges you had. But as a junior person, like when I finished, uh, maybe that would overlap more with your guys' experience. When I finished college, there were not many openings. For example, I finished in Jordan. There were not many openings that could satisfy my basically desire to grow. So I wanted to work on something big scale. But in Jordan, like at the time, we did not have like big companies. Like now there's a lot of companies like doing development in Egypt, in Jordan, in Latin America, and in North Africa. There's big opportunities, but at the time for me, like there were not many openings that I could like really go and challenge myself. I love to challenge myself. I love always to go out of the comfort zone that I'm living at. This is why you can see me like jumping ships a lot, like in the Silicon Valley, because sometimes you get too comfortable with the problems you're solving, so you need like some more challenging challenge. So yeah, so that's the first thing. I like when I was fresh grad, there were not many opportunities for me, so that was a challenge. Um, the other challenge, some of the other challenges I can think of, like as I got more senior, as I mentioned, there were not like sometimes you have to dig around to find the problem you really love to solve. Sometimes you get thrown into a project that you're not like really passionate about. If that happens, like you may just continue working there, or you might just start looking elsewhere. It could be another team, it could be another project. So this has personally been this is a lot of basically a challenge for me that I encountered over and over, basically. And the way I encountered that, it's basically, as I mentioned, I jump into another team. I would go into another problem that really, I'm really, I would be happy to basically tackle, and it challenges me enough, basically. Some of the other challenges is, I would say, communication and the software skills. It's basically there's always like whenever you're a software engineer or any of the other careers we mentioned, it's basically you should expect that you'll always be challenged, and you should always be able to know how would you, like you're proposing something new, you should have a good backing basically to justify why you're doing this or that. You should convince others, basically should be able to sell whatever you're doing. So yeah, that's some of the challenges that you will be facing basically.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And I want to go back to you share a little bit about when you just graduated in Jordan, for you back then, there were not so many opportunities. I will also like to know if you feel like comfortable sharing how was for you the experience from studying in Jordan to then moving to the US and then having a career, a professional career in the US? Were there any other challenges like from this transition, even like culturally adjusting to like the culture of a company in the US, or like, yeah, I'm just wondering because there are many, like many times a lot of our attendees are looking for not necessarily moving to another country, but also working for global companies. So I'm curious about that part.
Yeah, something I would say culturally is like some of the challenges, for example, if you're working outside the US, you want to come to the US, some of the challenges, of course, is going to be the visa. How would you come to the US? How can you come and start working, all of that? That's like a big beast, basically. If you wanna, like, if you're targeting working, for example, in the Silicon Valley. But that's another beast. I will not dive into that. Some of the other things that you mentioned is the culture of working overseas versus here in the US. Um, as I mentioned, some of the culture plus the technical side of things. Like overseas, they don't have this kind of big, massive scale that like you have to solve these kind of problems. So once you go to the US, and if you come here, you work in the Silicon Valley, there's a massive scale of like you have to solve like a lot of challenging engineering problems, which is nice. Like for me, I love these kind of things. So that's something you have to be like cautious about. It's not about the technical side of things. In terms of culture, you ask about that. It's a bit different culture. Like for example, in Jordan at the time, people people basically sometimes they used to time in and time out. For example, you have to come at 8 or 9, and then you have to leave at 5. In the US, I haven't seen any company in tech doing that. You just come whenever you want. And then but then that's sometimes a bit bad because sometimes people like stay late, like very late at work. If you go to Facebook, it's just like at 7 or 8 in the evening or 9, there's still people on their desks. This is kind of different culture than what we had in overseas or even in Europe. In Europe, people go early in the morning and then just leave at 4 or 5. Silicon Valley, US is a bit different culture. It's not that I like it, but that's how things are in the US. You are expected sometimes to work more hours, which is something that can impact your personal life sometimes. If you have a family, it can be more difficult. But I would say it really depends on the company. Even within the same company, you have different teams with different cultures. So that's how things are in the US. But overseas, it's more uniform. People tend to go in the morning and then just leave later. And then in the US, they care a lot about the impact. What is it that the impact? You have to show numbers. You have to show like what is the impact that you have done. Overseas, it's a bit like there's some kind of impact, but there's a lot of politics also involved sometimes, you feel. But yeah, in the US, you have to deliver impact, like in the Silicon Valley. But now things have changed, as I mentioned. Like if you want to target like the MENA region, if you want to target Latin America or Europe, things are like it's becoming kind of like this very similar in terms of culture wise. Yeah, so that's how things are evolving.
Amazing, thank you. We do have a lot of questions coming up, which is great. So I'm gonna follow up with one coming from Sean. So they're sharing that they have, first, congratulations, Sean, and best of luck. They're sharing that they have an interview, their first interview, coming up for a software engineering summer internship at a company that has an aerospace technology. It's basically an aerospace technology company. So they have had already the screening call, and now their interview is going to be logical and technical. So their interview is this Tuesday, which is exciting, and they're dedicating a lot of time to prepare. But they're asking, What can they expect during the interview based on your experience? The interview is with 4 software engineerings and the hiring manager. So they will appreciate any tips on what to prepare and how to prepare for this logical and technical interview.
Yeah, that's a good question. So for you, Sean, um, I hope you got a chance to basically practice solving coding questions. If not, I would encourage you to go to leetcode.com, and solve as many coding problems as you can. Start with easy, medium, and then you don't have to go into the hard. Just focus on easy and medium on LeetCode. That will basically give you a good breadth, basically, into all of the kind of questions they may ask. If they ask you about graphs, you're ready. If they ask you about like something like arrays, if they ask you about like any of the other greedy algorithm or something like that, you are ready basically. So that will satisfy the coding basically problem that you said there's 4 software engineers hired, like they're gonna interview you. That will get you ready for these kind of interviews. As I mentioned, you don't have to focus on the hard problems. You don't have to go into the like NP problems and uh, these kind of problems. Just focus on getting as much breadth as possible and focus on using one programming language you're familiar with. In the Silicon Valley, we don't care any language you can choose. Like we don't care about that because any language you can learn fast and you can start working using it. So you may get asked one design problem, and a design problem, so that's apart from coding. A design problem is basically you have a big system, how would you design it? For example, in Facebook, you have a lot of people, like whenever there's a live concert or something like that, there's people leaving comments and people liking these comments. So there's going to be like, for example, millions of comments. So how do you show like the top comments, for example, on the Facebook page? You don't want to show millions. How do you show that? So that's one example of a design problem. Also on lead code, I've seen a lot of people typing some of the design problems they have. So I think you will get asked one design problem, and the remaining 3 is going to be coding. So that should be getting you ready.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I love to see this really focused and personalized questions. That's the and they're thanking you in the chat for the advice. I also reshare with you, Sean, I know your interview is Tuesday, but in case you have any last minute questions or you want someone to practice your interview with, I reshare the workshop that we have on Monday, so you can come and ask for any, again, last minute advice or practice with someone. But yeah, this is the reasoning behind this session, so you can guys come and ask your individual questions to experts like Muhammad, which rarely you have access, this direct access to. But okay, so continuing with the questions, there's one about if you could go back in time, is there anything you will do different in your journey as a software engineer? Or not really?
Um, okay. So for me, if I go back in time, one thing I would have done is basically focus on AI. Um, Now I don't have really time to to like I've done AI in the past, like as part of my PhD, but I haven't like dived in deep. So that's something I wish I would get some time to focus on. So you guys have now probably plenty of time, so it's something you can focus on. Another thing you can focus on is basically mobile development if you are into mobile kind of things. Um, Another thing is basically yeah, these are the main things I would say if I go back in time, I would change.
Amazing. And I guess that's a follow-up question that it's related to some of the questions that we have here. They're also asking in the Q&A, What skills or technology do you believe will be important for some software engineers in the future? So you mentioned a couple of times already AI. You also mentioned for some roles machine learning. So apart from this, is there any other technology skills you think might be important for them to focus on?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that's going to be important is basically how to write, for example, services. How would you develop a product in the cloud? So public cloud is a very important part now of every basically company here in the US. You should be able really to navigate like on AWS or Azure or even GCP. You should be able to know how to launch your own like product or service on the cloud, because this allows you to move much faster. Like for smaller companies, public cloud is very important. AI, I mentioned that. Kind of the skills is really also sometimes, like, I would say Kubernetes, but I would say it's not. It's Yeah, no, forget about that. It's just, I would say public cloud, using public cloud and mastering one programming language is also something that's like gets you more into seniority. Basically, you have to master some language and you have to know, become an expert in it. It's useful. Uh, for example, now in like like early in the days, you used to see a lot of Java, C Sharp, and all that. Now it's less of these languages. For example, if you ask me, it's more like towards Go. There's a language called Go, Golang, or Rust. Um, Sometimes some of the embedded systems and all that, they have C, C++. But yeah, so yeah, learning a language in and out of it is useful. Learning all the public cloud functionalities is gonna give you a big advantage. Um, yeah, these are the main things I can think of.
Amazing. And a follow-up question to this is, how do you stay up to date with this like ever evolving tech industry, with these new technologies or skills they might need to focus on? So how do you personally stay up to date if you do? And also like how can they stay up to date?
Yeah, I gotta tell you, it's not easy. Like people think it's easy. It's not easy because you just have to keep exploring, basically. Uh, so basically, how do you stay up to date? Sometimes some conferences could be helpful. For example, and if like if your work requires you have, like, for example, cloud basically expertise, then there's some conferences like that, for example, Azure makes or AWS makes every year, that basically focuses on the latest things in the past 1 year. So these are pretty useful. Um, some frameworks you use, basically, they do publish. You have to follow these frameworks. For example, if you're using Golang as a language, they do publish basically with every release what is new. So this is how you get to know the delta, the new things. Um, it, like Twitter sometimes, yeah, like if you follow some of the influential folks or some of the owners of some like products and libraries, yeah, you may know some, but it's mostly really, for me, it's mostly about like conferences a little bit, and then mostly it's about like going to each product and seeing what is latest in there. Uh, but I would say the conferences, what is nice about conferences is that it tells you that, okay, there's a problem that space, and then you'll have a few people proposing some solutions, and then usually these solutions, they keep like kind of fighting against each other just to see which one is going to survive at the end. That's how things are in tech. Usually, whenever there's a problem, there's a few people proposing the same kind of thing. Some have pros and cons over the other, and then yeah, some work better than the other, and then ultimately one or two solutions would win.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have some other questions in the Q&A. So there's someone who's sharing, they're already more like in a mid-level career. So they're sharing, they have like around 10 years of working experience, but they're just venturing into software development. So do you have like any ideas, examples of executive level or like mid-level opportunities that will be better for them as opposed to writing code, if there's any other type of opportunities in the
Yeah,
software space?
yeah, a product manager or a project manager. So these two things is going to be like pretty useful because as an executive, operations executive, um, you have a lot of experience basically handling all these dependencies and talking with a lot of folks and figuring out, okay, where do we want to go next and all of that. So being a product manager or a project manager, basically a lot of these skills are transferable to these positions rather than like software development. So these are the main things I would encourage you to start looking at.
Great. And then we have one last question, also in the Q&A, where they're asking, how can one translate or interpret real-life problems into technical solutions? What skills are needed to be able to translate these real-life problems to offer a solution to fix them? Yeah.
Okay, so basically the question is, if you have some real life problem, uh, and I'm assuming something like, let's say, you have a website and like or a service and it's lagging. That's my assumption. You may have meant something else by your question, but that's my reading into it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Let's take that example.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So if you have this kind of problem, how do you translate that into a technical solution? It's basically, for me personally, is trying to understand first what the problem is, because in a lot of times you don't have people telling you, okay, here's the problem. You have to do sometimes a lot of digging actually to understand like that this is the problem. So first trying to dig through, trying to understand the space, trying to understand the problem, and then translating that, interpreting that into a technical solution. That's an easier part. It's basically usually whenever I have a problem, I would think about how would I come up with a design, and then I take that design and I ask my team to poke holes into it. I ask my team, here's my proposal, what do you guys think? And some people say, oh, this is like BS, this will not work. This is good, this is bad, and all that. So the more you get people to criticize your solution, the better your solution will become. So you take that solution, you don't go into coding phase immediately. That's a big no-no. First, you have to propose a solution, speak with other senior folks, trying to see if they can see that this solution would work. Some people will highlight some of the problems that you overlooked. So, and then after you create a design or propose a design, next phase is to prototype it. You just prototype something quickly. You write some dirty code just to just to figure out that this would indeed work, and there's no anticipated like unknowns. After that prototyping phase, you think it's all good, then you go into development phase. So the last phase is writing code.
Wow, that was a really summarized and comprehensive answer. And I guess that leads to the closing of this session. But I'm really glad that we had so many interesting questions from all of you guys. And just one comment where Vivian was sharing on the chat, Muhammad, that they're looking forward to listen to the recording over and over again, even though they attended the session live. So it means like it was really insightful. And yeah, I just want to thank you again for giving us 1 hour of your time today and sharing all these amazing tips and insights. And I don't know if you have any last advice before we close up this session.
Thanks for having me. I really hope that everyone here or everyone listening is basically lands the job of basically we're hoping for, and just keep hustling, just keep striving, and then you will go to the next level, and so and next and next, and yeah, just keep diving.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we hope to see everyone on Monday workshop and in another localized event, hopefully this month or next year after the break. So thank you so much, Muhammad, and happy holidays to everyone celebrating a holiday this season. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Happy New Year and happy holiday. Bye.